The morning I was told my boyfriend had died, I shattered in a way I hadn't in years. 20 minutes later, he knocked on my door smiling. For almost 3 years, I trusted Tristan completely. We didn't live together, but we had started seriously talking about it. We sent each other apartment listings, compared rent prices, and joked about all the little things we would probably argue over once we shared a place. Nothing had been signed yet. At the time, moving in together felt like the natural next step. Then Tristan went drinking with his friends Garrett, Blake, and Trevor one night. Whenever he stayed out late, he normally sent me a quick message when he got home. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to let me know he was safe. I woke briefly sometime after 2 that morning and noticed there was no message. I thought about texting him, then decided he had probably forgotten or gone straight to sleep. So I went back to bed. Late the next morning, I woke to several missed calls from Tristan's mother, Heidi. That immediately felt strange. Heidi and I got along well, but she wasn't someone who called me repeatedly without a reason. I called her back. No answer. Then I tried Tristan. Straight to voicemail. I sent him a message. Morning. Everything okay? Nothing. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe his phone had died. Maybe Heidi had called about something completely unrelated. But when I tried her again and still got no answer, that uneasy feeling in my stomach got stronger. Phoebe and Carmen, the 2 people I shared the house with, were both out that day, so I was alone. I texted Heidi. I saw your calls. Is everything okay? Eventually, a reply appeared. I can't talk right now. I stared at it. What happened? There was another delay. Then, Tristan didn't come home last night. There was an accident. I sat upright. What hospital? The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, then came back. Finally, he didn't make it. I read the message several times. My brain refused to understand it. He didn't make it home? He didn't make it to the hospital? I immediately called Heidi. No answer. Then Tristan. Voicemail. I texted again. What do you mean? Nothing. Please call me. Still nothing. Finally, I typed the question I was terrified to ask. Is Tristan dead? The answer came back. Yes. I'm so sorry. For a moment, everything around me seemed to stop. I remember staring at the screen. I remember hearing a car outside and thinking how strange it was that ordinary life could keep moving when mine had apparently just split open. I kept calling Tristan anyway. Every call went to voicemail. Some irrational part of me thought he might answer and explain that there had been a mistake. Then another message came from Heidi's phone. There had been a crash after Tristan left the place where he and his friends had been drinking. That was enough to make the story believable. He had been drinking. He hadn't contacted me. He hadn't gone home. His mother had called repeatedly. Now she was telling me he was dead. I stopped looking for another explanation. I believed it. And once I did, I fell apart. I had struggled with self-harm when I was younger, but I had made a lot of progress. I was in therapy. I had learned healthier ways to handle overwhelming emotions. It had been years since my last serious relapse. Tristan knew that history. Early in our relationship, it had made him nervous because of an ex who had apparently used threats during arguments and breakups. I understood why that experience had affected him, so I had always been careful to make one thing clear: my struggles were mine to manage. I had never used them to control him. By that point, I thought we had long since built enough trust to move past those fears. None of that was on my mind that afternoon. As far as I knew, Tristan was gone. I opened our messages. 3 years of conversations were sitting there. Photos. Plans. Arguments that suddenly seemed ridiculous. Memes. Voice notes. I found one where he was laughing while complaining that I always stole food from his plate. I listened to it. Hearing his voice made everything feel more real. There had been no goodbye. No final conversation. Just an ordinary voice message from someone who, as far as I knew, I would never hear speak again. I sent him one last message of my own. I told him I loved him. I apologized for things that suddenly felt meaningless. I said I wished I had known the last time I hugged him would be the last. I was crying so hard that parts of it probably didn't make sense. And while I was overwhelmed and alone, I relapsed. I'm not proud of that. It was something I knew I would have to address honestly in therapy. But in that moment, I wasn't trying to send Tristan a message or influence anything he might do. I believe there was no Tristan left to influence. About 20 minutes after I sent that voice note, someone knocked on my front door. I ignored it at first. Then they knocked again. I forced myself downstairs. When I opened the door, Tristan was standing there. Alive. For several seconds, my brain couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. He had a small scrape near his face, but otherwise he looked completely normal. He gave me an awkward smile. Surprise? I just stared at him. Savannah. I reached out and touched his arm. He was real. I threw my arms around him before I could even think. For those few seconds, relief overpowered everything. He wasn't dead. Then my mind caught up. I stepped back. What happened? He hesitated. What do you mean? Your mother told me you were dead. His expression changed. That was when I knew. He wasn't confused. He knew exactly what I was talking about. What did you do? He exhaled. Okay, before you freak out. Before I freak out? It was supposed to be a joke. I stared at him. A joke. He tried to step inside. I moved back. Explain. Tristan told me there had been an accident the night before. After drinking with Garrett, Blake, and Trevor, he had driven. At some point, he lost control and hit a fence post. No other vehicle was involved. Nobody was injured. But his car was damaged. You drove after drinking? I wasn't that drunk. You crashed. It was just a fence. That doesn't make it better. I know it was stupid. You could have hit someone. But I didn't. That answer told me he still didn't understand the point. Then he explained the rest. He knew I would be angry about the drinking, the driving, and the damaged car. While he and his friends were figuring out what to tell me, one of them joked that if I thought something much worse had happened first, I would be so relieved to see Tristan alive that the accident wouldn't seem as serious. Instead of recognizing how cruel that idea was, they turned it into a plan. Heidi had left her phone unattended. Without her knowledge or permission, they used it to call me repeatedly that morning. When I returned the calls, they ignored them. Later, they used the same phone to text me while pretending to be her. I felt sick. Your mother never sent those messages? No. So you pretended to be her. He looked away. Me and the guys. You told me you were dead because you thought it would make me less angry about you driving drunk? When you put it like that, it sounds insane. How else could I possibly put it? He rubbed his face. It was supposed to be dark humor. We thought you'd realize something was weird. I directly asked if you were dead. He said nothing. And you answered yes. We took it too far. You think. I know. I looked at him. When were you planning to tell me? He hesitated just long enough to make me dread the answer. After I heard your voice message. My stomach dropped. You listened to it? He nodded. That's when I realized you were actually taking it seriously. I stared at him. You thought your mother telling me you died in a crash wasn't something I would take seriously? That's not what I meant. You heard me saying goodbye to you. He looked down. I felt horrible. And that's when you finally came here? Yes. I stepped away. He tried to reach toward me, but I moved back again. That was when he realized I had relapsed. I didn't explain it in detail. I didn't need to. He knew my history. His first reaction wasn't concern. It was anger. Savannah, seriously? I stared at him. What? You did that because of this? I thought you were dead. It was a prank. You told me you were dead. I didn't know you were going to react like this. How exactly did you expect me to react? Not like this. That was the moment the conversation changed. Suddenly, what Tristan had done was no longer the main issue. My reaction was. He said I had turned a stupid joke into something much more serious. He accused me of making him feel responsible. Then he brought up his ex. My ex used to do things like this. No, don't compare me to her. She used to make me feel trapped. I have never done that to you. I'm saying this is exactly what I was afraid of. I stared at him. You were afraid that if you convinced me you were dead, I might believe you? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? He paused. What happens if I ever want to break up with you? For a second, I honestly thought I had misheard him. How am I supposed to know you won't react like this again? There it was. He had driven after drinking, crashed his car, impersonated his own mother, and deliberately convinced me he was dead. Now he was asking whether he could trust me. I said quietly, I have never threatened you. I have never told you that you couldn't leave me. I know, but now. No. He stopped. You don't get to take something that happened while I genuinely believed you were dead and rewrite it as me trying to control you. He suggested I needed more therapy. Maybe even time in a hospital. Those suggestions could have come from genuine concern in another situation. But that wasn't how he was using them. He was turning my mental health into a way to move attention away from his own choices. I told him to leave. He blinked. What? Go home. Savannah, come on. I need you to leave. We need to talk. Not now. He tried to step closer. I moved toward the door instead and opened it. He stared at me. You're seriously kicking me out? Yes. He shook his head. This is exactly what I mean. Everything becomes dramatic. I didn't answer. He finally walked outside. I closed the door and locked it. That night, Phoebe and Carmen came home and found me in the living room. I told them what had happened. At first, Phoebe thought she had misunderstood me. Then she realized I was serious. Neither of them pushed me to make an immediate decision about Tristan. They simply stayed with me. Over the next few days, Tristan sent message after message. At first, he defended himself. Then he started apologizing. But the apologies always came with something attached. He was sorry the joke had gone too far. Sorry they hadn't realized I would believe it. Sorry I had become so upset. Even when he apologized, my reaction remained part of his explanation. So I stopped responding. I spoke honestly with my therapist about the relapse. I accepted that it was something I needed to work through. But taking responsibility for my own actions did not mean accepting Tristan's claim that I had used them to manipulate him. Those were two separate things. A few days later, Heidi called me. This time, I knew immediately it was actually her. She sounded horrified. Savannah, I am so sorry. You don't need to apologize. They used my phone. I had no idea. I know. She told me Tristan had initially described it as a prank that got out of hand. Once she learned exactly what had been sent from her phone, she was furious. I would never tell you something like that through a text, she said. Looking back, that had been one of the first things that felt wrong. But panic had filled in the gaps. I told Heidi I didn't blame her. Before we ended the call, I even helped her make sure her phone was properly locked. It was such a bizarre detail that we both gave this exhausted little laugh. Almost 2 weeks after the prank, I agreed to meet Tristan. By then, I had already made my decision. I wasn't meeting him to repair the relationship. I wanted to end it clearly, without another argument through text. We met at a quiet coffee shop. When Tristan arrived, he looked exhausted. He sat across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, I've been thinking a lot. So have I. I know I messed up. I waited. I shouldn't have driven. No. I know. I had written down what I wanted to say because I didn't want the conversation dragged into side arguments. I need you to listen until I'm finished. He nodded. So I told him why I was leaving. The drunk driving mattered because nobody getting hurt had been luck, not proof that the decision was harmless. Then there was the lie. Using Heidi's phone. Pretending to be her. Confirming that Tristan was dead when I directly asked. Letting me believe it until he heard how devastated I was. And afterward, instead of taking responsibility, blaming me for reacting badly to something he had deliberately made me believe. You had multiple chances to stop, I said. You kept choosing not to. He looked down. I know. You didn't end it because you suddenly realized faking your death was wrong. You ended it when hearing me grieve made the joke uncomfortable. He closed his eyes for a moment. I know. And when you came to my house, you made my mental health the bigger problem. I panicked. You blamed me. He nodded. I did. For once, he didn't argue. He apologized for driving. For the messages. For using his mother's phone. For allowing the lie to continue. For comparing me to his ex. Then he admitted something I hadn't expected. When I realized how serious it had become, I didn't want to be the bad guy. So I tried to make it about you. It was probably the most honest thing he said throughout the entire situation. And I believed him. I appreciate you admitting that. He nodded. But I'm still ending the relationship. His face changed immediately. What? I'm breaking up with you. He stared at me. But we just talked through everything. I know. I admitted I was wrong. Yes. So, what was the point of this? The point was for me to tell you why I'm leaving. He leaned back. You already decided before you came? Yes. So none of that mattered? It mattered. An apology just doesn't undo what happened. We were together almost 3 years. I know. And you're throwing that away over one terrible night? It wasn't one mistake, Tristan. It was a series of choices. I said I was sorry. And I believe you. Then what else do you want from me? Nothing. He looked genuinely confused. I don't want anything from you. I'm ending it. His jaw tightened. Then he shook his head. You're being dramatic. That was all I needed to hear. After nearly 2 weeks, after all the apologies and promises that he understood, we had ended up exactly where we started. The moment forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. My reaction became the problem again. I picked up my bag. He looked up. You're seriously leaving? Yes. Savannah. I paused. For a second, I thought he might say something that would make leaving harder. He didn't. So I said, "Take care of yourself, Tristan." And I walked out. Ending the relationship didn't instantly make everything easier. I continued therapy. I dealt with the setback honestly. And I had to grieve a relationship that had contained a lot of genuinely good memories before one terrible night changed how I saw the person I had made them with. That was probably what made leaving hardest. Tristan had not spent 3 years being cruel to me. There had been good times. He had supported me before. I had trusted him. We had been planning a future. I didn't need to pretend all of that had been fake in order to accept that what happened had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. We had been close to moving in together. Sometimes I still think about that. Had we already signed a lease and combined more of our lives, leaving would have been much more complicated. Instead, I learned something important before we got there. When Tristan made a reckless decision, he tried to control how I would react to it. When that failed, he tried to make my reaction the bigger problem. That was what I couldn't move past. Not just the prank. Not just the crash. The way he handled responsibility when the consequences became real. The strange thing is that on the morning I believed Tristan had died, I really did lose the person I thought I was building a future with. He just happened to still be alive. Maybe someone else would have seen what happened as one terrible night that deserved another chance. I couldn't. Because by the time Tristan finally admitted what he had done, the question was no longer whether I could forgive him. It was whether I could ever trust him the same way again. And I already knew the answer.